introduction. So today we still have our panelists. That is Mr. Daniel Wanjama, Dr. Esther Kimani, and we also have Kasim Owino, who will be joining us as well. So as we begin, we are going to give the platform to Mr. Daniel Wanjama to continue with the presentation. Karibu, Daniel.
Asante. Good evening, everyone. And I am happy to join you again in this conversation. And I want to confirm that you are hearing me. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Loud and clear. Good.
Yes.
So yeah, Daniel Wanjama, as you have heard, and I'm the coordinator of Seed Savers Network, and we are about supporting farmers, especially small-scale farmers, to access seeds. We said that last week, if you remember, we said that there are many seeds that you may not find in the ordinary seed shops, and these seeds are as necessary as any other seed that you may require. And that's why we think there is what we call farmers managed seed system that is important, that should be protected, and that this should be supported by all stakeholders, especially the government. Now, we were discussing organic seeds, and I saw a lot of comments and questions, and I wish to comment in some of them. Part of the my presentation that had not been dealt with was actually that part, organic seed, and also another aspect of seed that I wanted to talk about, open source seed system. So, and in terms of organic seeds, I don't know whether I mentioned this, but you'll be surprised to know that organic seeds are illegal in Kenya. They are illegal in the sense that they cannot be certified because of the condition put on certification or regulations on certification that require seeds to be addressed and a lot of time with chemicals. So that's why they are illegal, and it is hard to import. And you'll also be surprised that most of these regulations that we have are also global in nature. They are, I could say, somehow imported. But if you go to Western world, I mean, Europe, even America, they have organic seeds because their regulations are a bit different. They're a bit more farmer-friendly. So that's why to grow organic food is struggling, because when they want to get seeds, they cannot import. They have to buy the seeds that we have here, and then those seeds have to be washed off chemicals. Otherwise, when the certification is done, the inspection is done, and the chemicals are found on their soil, then they might not be certified. So we have a big challenge with the supply, but the biggest challenge is to do with the law. So that's why we don't have organic seed. But I also want to comment on an open source seed system. And open source seed system, open means open, like it's free, but not free without a price, but it's free that they don't have patent. So there is a model of seed business, also again in the Western world, that is championing trading seed, but without having them patented or without having plant breeders' rights on them. people are saying that it is not good to have plant breeders' rights on plants or having patent on plants, because plant basically is life, is life, is patenting life, and life is somehow natural. Even if they're hybrids or wherever they are a combination of life, and life is existing naturally. And having this kind of patent on seeds restrict people from innovation. Like, people may not be able to combine different varieties. People may not be able to save seeds or adapt them to various environment. So it prevents people from innovating. And having patent on seeds also is what push the prices high, make seeds inaccessible to many, because if I develop a certain variety and it does well and it is selling well, and legally I'm the only one who is supposed to multiply and sell that particular variety, it means I can price it the way I want, because no one else legally is allowed to sell it unless they have my permission. And that is what is making them that is why people now advocating for this open source seed system. And you'll be surprised, in Kenya, for instance, it is impossible for you to register any variety without, you may register without protecting it, but KEPHIS will automatically protect your variety, because people will demand, the KEPHIS will demand for you to get certification, you have to have permission from the person who registered any variety. So therefore, whether you pay for protection or for the patent, you'll be automatically be protected, and that will make seeds unavailable. And that's why you saw in the papers the other day, we heard Carol advertise so many seeds. They say they have done so many varieties, so many innovations, but they all lie on the shelves, because for you to exploit them in a commercial way, you need their permission to either pay royalty or pay initial amount, that is a lot of money, so that you are able to access the seeds and start multiplication. Otherwise, they will still be there. And even when Caro is a public facility, that is, essentially they are not supposed to have them protected, but because the laws do not allow them to have the seeds any other way, because the moment it is registered, then it is protected, and that make it now unavailable to many people, and unavailable even to the traders who would have wanted to deal with them, and that make the innovation go to waste, because they are public funded, but the innovations are just lying there, which is not a very nice thing. And that is why it is important for people to have that kind of debate on whether it is important for that patent or that plant breeder's right to be added on the seed registration, and whether it is important for KEPHIS to continue preventing people from exploiting those varieties, even when they are developed by public institutions like CARO or universities, or they are developed by even individuals who are not interested in the protection. And I also want to comment a bit on GMO. Like us on this side of debate, what we think about the GMO is that GMOs, to start with, currently the GMOs are like, they belong to almost only one company globally. Like 90% of them are inaccessible. They are all patented again, and you have seen the result of the patent. The patent means you cannot multiply them, and that means if we have, for instance, we say GMO, they are our solution, and we go for GMO food, we go for GMO seed, it would mean that we depend on foreigners. I'm sorry to say, foreigners who are supposed to be supplying us seeds. They decide what we are supposed to eat. They decide what we are supposed to plant. And there are also very, very stringent regulations on GMOs, so much that if I'm growing some maize here and there is GMO maize next fence, if the GMO pollen fall on my farm, it will mean that I should test my neighbor genes that are protected in law. They belong to someone. So it would mean that I'm supposed to pay, even when I did not tell anybody to come. It's like a bull jumping from the other side to mount your cow on this other side, and someone charge you for that because their bull broke the fence. And there has been such cases like in US where people have been prosecuted for receiving pollen from GMO crop when they not bought the seed. So there are very stringent measures to make sure that everyone buy the seed, and to make sure that no one really is having the genes, the GMO genes, without paying for them. And the other issue is that most of the GMOs are also designed to sell chemicals. A lot of time, like you may see, like for instance, there is what we call GM soya. GM soya, they are designed to resist glyphosate. And again, if they applied on the glyphosate, it means that every time you are using them, then you can use a lot of herbicides, you can use chemicals, and they are not getting affected. And it means poisoning our environment and contaminating our soil and all that. And also some studies have shown that GMOs, they are causing cancer. I have been in a discussion where we have seen some people who have done some tests on mice and other organisms, and they have discovered that GMO food is causing cancer. So it's GMO is something that we don't we won't tell farmers to use, because they lose their ability to reproduce the seeds because of the patent, and again they also expose themselves to danger, and they also force a lot of chemicals to be used. Yeah, and I also want to comment on vegetatively propagated crops. Yes, and as you may have noted also, we import a lot of seeds, mostly vegetable seeds, but what does not come from outside, mostly vegetatively propagated seeds. For instance, cassava, sweet potatoes, and even sometimes even potatoes. Those ones are in scarcity. A lot of time, farmers are not able to access them in time or in the shape that they want, because there are no suppliers. And there are no suppliers because, again, the seed laws favors someone who do large business. And these ones can only be done in small scale. And that's why, for us, in a Seed Savers Network, for us, we advocate to have seed traders in the villages who are able to supply, who are also farmers, and they're able to supply seed within the villages so that they can supply this kind of materials. If someone needs cassava, they should know there is a farmer who could be preserving them pure and clean. So they should go to get them from that. And but there is also a challenge when it comes to certification of this vegetatively propagated material, because we feel it's like double certification, because you have to have a HCDA look at them, including seedlings. You have to have certificate from HCDA and also from KEFIS, and you are paying all of them, and some of them are expensive. Like KEFIS, you have to even pay for mileage. So you end up paying a lot of money even before you start selling anything. So I want to stop there a bit, but let me just mention about the quality assurance with farmer seeds. Again, farmers have been supplying seeds to one another over the years, and they have always depended on trust. People knew that if I get a seed from my neighbor, they are good because I know them and I know my neighbor, so they might not be lying to me. And also of this country, we need to develop regulation to facilitate farmers to sell seeds, develop regulations on quality and all that, so that we are able to have those seeds safe, especially those that the normal commodity system. And we should also maybe see how regulations on standard of organic standards could be used in certifying farmer seeds, so that they are quality. And farmers should also have knowledge. We are that is what we are doing, giving farmers knowledge so that they're able to test seeds, germination, and also check on the diseases, so that they're able to check on which kind of crops or which kind of varieties should go to the next generation.
Okay.
Or which kind of how to check transfer to the next level. So I want to stop there. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Daniel. There are quite a number of questions, and we are going to take all the questions at the same time. So we'll give the platform to Dr. Esther Kimani to just give us some information about vegetative propagation for about 7 minutes, so that we can now focus on the questions. There are quite a number from last week and this week also, they're already streaming in. So karibu daktari. You're on mute. Let me see. Okay, I've unmuted you. Okay. You're okay now?
Yes. I hope the correct version of my presentation has been received. Thank you very much for inviting me again to speak on vegetatively propagated materials. I think just to recap on from last week's presentation. Last week we discussed about is my presentation going to be projected?
Ricky, are you able to project the presentation? Okay, maybe you can just proceed, then I'll sort it out with Ricky, yeah.
Okay. Okay, first, the outline of my presentation today, I will talk about the plant propagation, vegetative propagation, types of vegetative propagation, and quality assurance of vegetative propagated materials, and then certification of vegetative propagated materials in Kenya, and then I'll make my conclusion. So when I talk of plant propagation, I'm talking about producing new plants. And there are two methods for production of two plants. There is the one for using the seeds, known as sexual, because you have the male and the female plants coming together, their parents coming together and producing a seed, just like the way animals and human beings give birth to children through mating. Then we have their sexual production, or vegetative. Another word for their sexual propagation is the one for the vegetative propagation, whereby it's a kind of cloning of that plant. So today we shall be looking at the vegetative propagation. There are various forms of vegetative propagations. Maybe I can just mention the common ones like grafting, and also we have grafting where you have suckers and bulbs like in onions, or tubers like in potatoes. And then just to mention the Seed and Plant Varieties Act Cap 326, which I mentioned last time extensively, defines both types of propagation materials for production of new plants. Though in the context you find that it concentrates more in the the production of plants through the true seed, and doesn't cover much the vegetative propagated materials other than the potatoes. So what are the differences between the two in terms of what you observe, whichever method that you use? For the asexual one, people like it because it's quicker, and you can have some very vigorous hybrids when you cross different types of plants. And for some varieties, for some plants, it's the only way of propagation, that is through the seeds. You can't prune the plant. And through seed also, you can be able to avoid certain diseases. And it maintains some kind of genetic diversity. While you're using the vegetative propagation, it has its own advantage because sometimes you can, it's easier, it may be easier for you to get other plants using that, the vegetative propagation. It may also be the only way for some of the varieties, so you have no choice, but you have to use it to multiply the cultivars. And it may be the quickest method for the production of the plant. For example, for the trees, like let's say you want to propagate avocado trees. If you are using the seed, it may take you almost 6 years before you get a plant, or even more. Where if you are using vegetatively propagated plants, maybe in 2 or 3 years. At least by 4 years, you'll already be having your fruits. Some crops like tea, you cannot use if you are waiting for the seeds, you wait forever, though it can produce seed, and then you plant seed to get more tea plants. It may take forever. While using vegetative propagation, you can get the plants very quickly. So I had some pictures just showing some of the plants that I guess those ones now people can see, since I think the presentation can't come up. Some of the plants that we commonly use, like the bananas, roses, strawberry, sweet potatoes, all those kind of plants are vegetatively propagated. And there are different types of vegetative propagations. You have got artificial vegetative propagation and also the natural one. So for the artificial ones, there are those ones that need the humans to intervene so that it can happen. And examples of artificial propagation, you have cuttings where the person has to cut the plants into pieces to propagate it, or when you are grafting, when you're using suckers, though that one can both be natural and artificial. When you are doing things like tissue culture in the labs, all those are artificial kind of vegetative propagation. Then you have the natural vegetative propagation, where you have runners or bulbs or tubers or combs, and or the plantlets that just develop naturally. So what are the challenges in vegetative propagation of crops? One of them is logistical issues, when you have to transport the planting materials from one place to another. Most of the time they prove to be quite bulky, like the potato tubers. If you are planting, if you have to move those seeds across the country, they can be quite bulky. Or if you are transferring suckers of bananas, then it becomes quite difficult to do it. The other one is when you're trading across nations also, many people are not aware about the phytosanitary requirements, because those plants can really be of high risk material, because if you have one plant, the mother plant, that is sick, infected by viruses or other diseases, if you are going to produce it vegetatively, it means that even the plants that come out of it are also affected. And so you find that it can spread diseases across nations. And also what happens is that also if those plants are affected by a very serious disease, you find that the diseases can wipe out the whole crop. And this is one of the challenges that we are having with vegetative propagation materials. In fact, if we don't set up systems for certification and maintenance of the clean materials for those materials, they will just disappear. I would like to sit down somewhere with Daniel Wanjama and really have a debate with him about some of the things he has said, but I don't know. I don't know where I'll meet him. Then there's the variable demand for vegetative propagated materials. You find that because, for example, let's say like bananas, whereby the farmers can have their own suckers and multiply them in their farms, you find that they may not demand the materials for propagation. They may not go to the market to buy, or they may not buy from nurseries because they can make them themselves. Or like the sugar canes or things like those, they may just decide they want to make them themselves. And so this discourages the people who want to set up a business in that area, because they may not have markets among the villagers. So, and then also their perishability, they can't be stored for long, like the seeds. You know, seeds, once you treat them, you can keep them for long and store them. And then the other one is also purity. You find that over the years, they have mixed different varieties. And so unless someone invests now in cleaning them up and coming up with a pure variety so that it can give you a particular yield that you can predict, then you find there's a challenge with that. So what is the quality assurance of vegetative, what are the standards that are there? I think globally, this is an area that has not been focused. And I think it's because of some of the challenges that I have mentioned. But you also find that these vegetatively propagated materials are also very important to Africa. Things like arrowroots, cassava, yams, all those kind of foods. However, globally, they are also considered as minor crops. So you find that if you, at global level, if you say you want a standard on that, it's very hard to get consensus on the kind of standards that should be developed. So you find that despite the fact that these foods contribute greatly to food security in Africa, there are no harmonized standards globally that allow even for trade in these crops. However, FAO has developed a kind of a protocol. I think I gave it in my presentation. You can share with the people for who may wish to read. It's the FAO Plant Production and Protection Paper number 195. And it just gives some guidelines for the certifications of these materials. And then, so in Kenya, let me now talk about Kenya. You have the you have the HCD, as Wanjama has said, that does the registration of nurseries, but mainly they focus on the horticulture crops. And then also KEFIS does the inspections or certification for the diseases. And so KEFIS certifies for the diseases of the registered nurseries. And okay, Wanjama is saying that is a replication, which to some extent I can almost agree with him, but the problem is the different competencies among the different bodies that do the certification and registration. Actually, KEFI stepped in when they realized that most of the materials, though they were coming from registered nurseries, were infected by diseases and pests, and these were affecting the production of the crops. So that's how KEFIs came in, and we certify on phytosanitary issues and also on plant variety. The other problem was also the trueness type of the variety. If you want to do business, you have to ensure that the crops that you're planting or the plants that you plant to establish your plantation are uniform, so that if you say that, for example, avocado is the Hass variety, all the plants needs to be Hass variety. But also if you are mixing them, you have to mix them intentionally, actually knowing which variety it is, so that when you're harvesting, whatever you're harvesting is useful, so is uniform, so that it can be acceptable to the customers. And you find that the requirements of the crops vary from one crop to another, depending on the pests of concern. And the purpose of this certification is just to ensure that the plants are free from pests and diseases. So what is the conclusion? What I can conclude is that there's a big gap in the certification of propagated, of vegetative propagated materials. And most of the materials are mainly important to the African countries and are considered globally as minor crops. So as African countries, we need to take control of these and set an example and do what we need to do for ourselves. So it is important for African countries to develop standards for the specific crops that are important to them. And Kenya can take the lead. And then opportunities exist for trade. And as this has already been seen, because since 2014, we've been promoting avocado a lot. And I can see many other African countries becoming interested in the same, and they are even demanding certified seedlings from Kenya for import. But one of the things one has to realize is that if you want to export, you need to meet certain standards. So there's need to invest in the training and capacity building of the various techniques that are required for you to get high quality materials. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kimani. We'll proceed on to the Q&A. There are quite a number of questions. If Kasim manages to join us, he should be able to take some of the questions, but some of the questions cut across all the three sectors. That's the sector that actually handles the certification, also Wanjama in terms of the seed savers, and some of it in the private sector. So one of the questions that has been directed to Dr. Kimani would be about the GMO planting material. And I know this one will also be handled probably by Daniel. When you look at GMO, can you demystify the myth that is surrounding the GMO planting materials? You know, there's been a lot of discussion around GMO materials, and most people are of concern, especially when we are looking at food security. Will it really, really improve our food security? And also when we are looking at safety, Wanjama has just mentioned that some of them have been proven that they have some cancer, you know, carcinogenic kind of feeds that can lead to cancer. What kind of proof is there that these materials actually can cause cancer? And also what does it mean in terms of food security for our country when you're looking at food security, but also looking at it in terms of food safety? And also there's something about the ongoing trials by Calro. We know they're already doing the trials. It's been, you know, it's already out there that it's being done. We've seen cassava, we've seen BT cotton, and we've also seen maize. Maize has been there for quite a while. What does this mean to our country? Do we have already in our system, do we already have seeds that are genetically modified? And if they are there, which crops are we talking about when we are talking about the GMO seeds? Yeah, those are the questions directed to you before I move on to Wanjama. Maybe you can address this, Dr. Kimani.
Okay. for me, from a scientific point of view, I would say that GMO is just a plant that is produced using a different technique for breeding, because actually in breeding, I think the breeders normally fix genes in other varieties to come up with a new variety. It's only that the technique here differs. However, also what I can say is that before a GMO is released into the market, it undergoes very vigorous testings to prove its safety. And therefore, if the government has allowed any GMO in the market, the citizens can be comfortable that it is safe, because of the kind of evaluation debates that goes around it. So on the issue of food safety, I would also say that many of the GMOs that are being introduced are being utilized elsewhere or eaten elsewhere, and other than the normal allergies, because you see people say they are allergic to eggs or something like that. Maybe I wouldn't say that there are any major reports that could really say that GMOs that are being approved for food are not safe. However, as Wanjema has extensively explained, I would classify most of his concerns as social and economic concerns, because you find that if varieties are protected and they are owned by only one person, I don't know what would happen if everybody adopted them and liked them so much, and the person one day decides that the variety will not be cultivated. I don't know. So those are some of the things that even as we adopt the GMOs, that the laws and the regulations that are there will be able to protect the citizens, will be able to protect the people. On the ongoing trials at CALO, I think these are just new technologies that are being proposed to be adopted. But what I would encourage Kenyans to do is to be, what is it? I know we like promotions very much. And so if someone comes and promotes GMO and tells us how good they are, we abandon all the other things that we have been doing. But I would say that let it be just one of the technologies that is in the market, and we continue to invest and develop even the other technologies and we have. And especially one of the problems we have is people investing into the seed systems. Why I was saying that I would like to sit somewhere with Daniel and discuss. There are very many varieties that that no one asks anybody on what you do. But if you look around, you see there are no seeds, because maybe people are not motivated to invest into them. And I don't know why. One thing as a regulator, because I've been a regulator for a very long time, that even now when I'm out of cases, I still feel like a regulator, is that whenever something is regulated, you find it like it generates a bit of interest. For a very long time, we were not very stringent in regulating the potato seed. However, for a very long time, we only had ADC producing and a bit in Carol. But in I think it was 2004, we realized that bacterial wilt was threatening to wipe out the potatoes, yeah, and especially in the main growing areas, like in fact, like Central, it's like all their soils were infected. Molo was the major production area, and the soils were being infected, and the potato was going to disappear. So we decided, besides the inspection on the field, we were going to do tests in the lab to ensure that the potato tubers that are certified are free from bacterial wilt. And that's the time now the industry started growing. So many people started being interested, even investing into the seed system. In fact, there are, like in wheat, the regulations, the application of regulations in the past hadn't been very stringent, and you find our wheat industry is not developed. However, in about 2 years ago, we decided we were going to regulate. And if you look at the data, you can see now the seeds of wheat are being, certified seeds are being available. For the potato, the companies producing seeds have increased in the last 5 years from 4 of them to almost 30. So I don't agree that regulations discourages people from investing into the businesses of seed, but actually it creates an enabling environment for investments into the production of high quality seed.
Thank you, Dr. Kimani. Now on Wanjama, Daniel, just looking at what Dr. Kimani has said, you've seen about the regulations, you've mentioned how it is challenging to actually bring in an organic planting material. Could you please just talk about where these materials are available, if they are available, and even take us through the certification process? What do you have to go through when you are bringing in these organic seeds? And generally, just the challenges that you encounter, not only maybe in Kenya, if you have encountered in other countries in East Africa, could you please just share this with the audience, please?
Thank you. Thank you. And I also want to thank Dr. Kimani. I think she is even better suited to explain the process, but I think there are various forms that you need to fill, and some of the forms, I think they are to request for permission, and again, you also need to get confirmation from the other side that what you want to bring are certified and they meet the standards. So some of the standards to be met is that application of chemicals, that is seed dressing, that make them a bit unacceptable in the organic standard, because then chemicals are not needed. And but I think again, I would want also Dr. Kimani maybe to comment on that. And I'm happy that this forum is also bringing us together. And because, yes, you know, Dr. Kimani is from the other side, I'm from this side, and we maybe we look a lot of at a lot of things from various perspectives. But to me, regulations are not bad, and they are good, as you have said. But aspect of them that are that we think they should be different. For instance, the issue of patent, this issue of having one company having too much control of food system, and I'm happy that you recognize that. It is possible to have a company coming here, maybe a foreign company coming here, introducing a certain variety of maybe cassava, and then to use all the money to promote it on radio, on TV, everywhere, and then farmers believe they should discard theirs. When they have already done that and our local varieties don't exist anymore, then the company can decide, I will not supply or set very high standards for supply or set high prices, and then people will not be having it. And as you know, that is also facilitated by some regulations, mostly to do with plant breeders' rights, and especially if I was to go back a bit with GMO, you know, you already have a ban for GMO in the country that was done by the cabinet some time back, because I think of the same concerns. So I believe there are some concerns that should be addressed, and people should be afraid. But I would like maybe Dr. Kimani to comment more on this issue of bringing in seeds.
Okay. Maybe I can comment on a question here. Someone is wondering during my reign whether I was responsible for certifying or uncertifying. I don't know. I was responsible for certifying. I don't know, maybe they can tell me why they think I also was responsible for uncertifying. But to respond to Wanjama, on the request for permissions and whatever, this is just having transparency, because you find that in the seed industry is one of the places where if things are not done right, it can really affect many lives in terms of seed food security. And one of the reasons why all these controls are there, I think before we challenge the procedures and regulations, it's important to just check why they are there. It's already known that when you move seeds from one country to another, or generally plant materials from one country to another, you are likely also to move pests and diseases to the other country. And those pests and diseases may not exist in that country. And when they are brought in, history has already shown, and experiences from history are there, whereby it has been shown that when pests are moved from one country to another, they may become even more serious and cause havoc in the countries where they have been introduced than even they were causing in their country of origin. Yeah. An example is one time the Phytosanitary wiped out potato production in Ireland. I think it was 1845, and even many people died because of hunger, and others migrated. And those kind of experiences triggered the world to develop what we call phytosanitary standards that regulate movement of materials, including seeds, from one country to another, so that the diseases that are in one country just remain in that country, and especially the quarantine one. And then so that and then also phytosanitary standards now facilitate trade between the countries. Otherwise, if you don't have those systems, you may not even be able to move plant materials from one country to another. Why do we require all these forms to be filled? It's because also the risks vary from one crop to another, and you may not even have the information on what the risks are. So one of the things that you fill in those forms is the plants that you are bringing in and where you are bringing them from, because also the diseases vary from one country to another. The risks of importing from one country may not be the same as the risks of importing from another country. And so from that, now the inspector is able to determine the requirements for importation. Those requirements are for prevention, to facilitate you actually bring the materials, but not the pest. And then also the confirmation on the other side is because the inspector needs to inspect and confirm that the materials you are bringing in are free from the diseases that are of concern to Kenya. And so through those regulations, now we are able to, those systems are able to facilitate you to do safe trade. And Kenya, because we have got organized systems for those kind of things of trading of materials, you will find that compared to other countries in Africa, we have got very vibrant, agriculture trade, Very few countries in Africa have vibrant agriculture trade because their phytosanitary systems are not very well developed. With regard to patent encourages people to invest into the varieties and into the seed system, because it takes a lot of investments for you to come up with a new plant variety. And so it's only fair that you are given some kind of a right for some time, because these patents are not forever, they end after some time. It's just fair that you be given some protection so that you can be able to recoup back your investments. And this encourages the breeders to invest into new varieties. And also because Kenya applies these patent systems, we are able to access very high, good varieties from all over the world. The breeders have no problem letting us access that. And then we are major exporters of agriculture products. However, we also encourage many Kenyans to invest into this so that they can also own varieties. Varieties are technology, like any other technology in engineering, and it can be used to build wealth. However, also, there are many plants that are not patented. I don't know why people are not investing in them. I think Kenyans, we like just looking at what someone else is doing and then we want that one and criticize. Otherwise, they are like for these vegetative materials, we would encourage actually people to invest in them. Other than the potatoes, most of them are not patented by anybody, but no one is actually investing into the production of high quality clean materials. For the reason why also we register people, let's take an example of avocado. In 2014, when we started promoting avocado, when we saw there was a lot of opportunity in the market for avocado has variety, very few people were investing into the nurseries, production of materials. Then even those who are investing into it were not very concerned about the variety. But through when you are being certified, you also get the benefits of being advised, being capacity building on techniques like grafting, all of them. And then you're able to streamline your system. And this also, because the people you're selling to those materials also see the value, they demand, and you can make money. So if we can streamline all these systems, we would stop talking about poor farmers, but we would talk about farmers who are in business, because they would be trading. And why you need to pay for it is because someone has to spend their time, energy to maintain all this. So they need a salary out of the work they are doing. Thank you.
Asante sana, Daktari and Wanjama. Now, another question for Wanjama would be, how do you ensure that you have maintained the quality of these organic seeds? Yeah, when you're talking about exchanging materials with the farmers, and Dr. Kimani has brought in a very important point in terms of the seed-borne diseases. How do you ensure that you're giving your farmers quality seed when you're doing the organic seed?
Thank you. Thank you. I would want to refer you back to another activity that we had some times back, that we were showing seeds, we were showing a lot of varieties. Farmers were displaying what they have. And we also had people from the county agriculture office come to attend.
We see, yeah, we are losing you.
Big challenge.
Yeah, we are losing you. I think the network, yeah, we are losing you. We lost you a bit, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm saying that
hello.
Even the can you hear now? Hello.
Yes, please
Hello?
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry for that. Now, I'm saying that everyone, all the stakeholders recognize the role of education to farmers, training farmers so that they are able to ensure quality themselves. And for instance, this issue of, for instance, potato seeds and diseases that are seed-borne, like the bacterial wilt. The only way you could stop the spread, because the seeds that are certified are only 4% in the country. The only way you could stop the spread is by giving farmers knowledge so that they're able to identify the diseases, and they're able to, so that crop, when they recycle seeds or when the seeds are passed from one farmer to the next. So to us, that is what we do. We educate farmers so that they're able to assess quality. And for other crops where they have doubts, we also teach them the process of conducting germination tests, so that they're able to test the seeds before they are planted, and they're able even to test the seed before they could pass them or they could exchange with other farmers. And that somehow they ensure quality in terms of germination. And in terms of diseases, especially the observation in terms of vegetatively propagated material. They look and identify the diseases that are seed-borne, so that the materials that they have diseases or they have pests,
Okay.
they're able to identify that themselves,
that,
and they are not passing it to anybody else. And that is the mechanism, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Kimani, just hold on a bit. There's a question that is linked to that. When it comes to vegetative propagation of these materials, potato, of course, being one of them, how do you ensure that these materials, especially when we are talking about certification, do we certify also the organic ones? Are you involved in the process of certifying the organic materials, planting materials? And if there are any places where we can get these materials, how sure are we that we are buying the right materials, especially when you're looking at the things like the cuttings, you know, we just buy them from the roadside nurseries. How sure are we that we are not carrying diseases from the, you know, from those nurseries into our farm, hence causing an issue with our food security and also maybe food safety? How do we identify where we can get the certified seeds? And when Wanjama is talking about the organic one, how sure are we that even the training is not going to, you know, affect the kind of seed that we are going to get on our farms?
Okay, first, let me comment on the illegality of imports. It's not illegal. In fact, KEFI's facilities. However, the challenge that is there with the importation of organic seeds that are not treated is that it's usually very hard to assure freedom from pests and diseases of concern to Kenya. However, now when it comes to the local market now for the organic seeds, there are no systems for certification, and I think this is one of the areas that we need to work on. So farmers just exchange the seed, but when you are certifying the seeds, you are looking at the freedom from certain diseases that cause economic losses. You are also looking at the ability of the seeds to germinate, and also the trueness to type of the seeds. So you find that now with when this now is not regulated and farmers are just exchanging seeds, it cannot be assured. So you find that the organic, in fact, I feel that we really need to focus on the organic industry in Kenya because it has not developed because it was never regulated at all. And we left it to the private sector and the farmers to just regulate themselves. And so the industry never developed. And since this is where the world is going, we need to do something about it. It's not illegal for organic, anybody wanting to trade in organic seeds and whatever can always be facilitated at KEFIs, but they have, the seeds coming in have to meet phytosanitary requirements. So they should not bring in more pests and diseases than we already have, and especially the quarantine pests. I also see that on the issue of the potato, what was the questions? And local certification. Oh, sorry. Now, on the issue of the farmers doing the certification, it's not possible for some of the diseases, especially viruses, and even some of the bacteria. You find that the potato, it's like HIV and AIDS, or the way we are hearing about corona, you can have it and no one knows, so we have to wear masks whether you are sick or not, or whether your neighbor is sick or not. It's the same thing with the plants. You may have the plants may be infected, but the disease is not showing. In fact, the seeds look very healthy. So in that case, the farmer cannot even tell whether the seeds are healthy or not. In fact, I think there's a team that was reviewing the phytosanitary requirements, and we are thinking that we need to incorporate these vegetative materials into the law, at least for the certification on phytosanitary issues, so that at least we can assure those who want to invest into crops that are vegetatively propagated and are affected by these latent diseases that don't show easily, they can be assured of clean materials through testing in the lab. I think with regard to the payments, people should not be very worried, because if they're in business and they're making money, it's only fair that they support the systems that facilitate them to do that business. Someone is complaining here that I did certification and certifying of the seed, so we don't have enough seed. But the person should go back to history and look at the data and see how the trends on the availability of certified seeds as a result of me certifying them. And the business environment that has been created, that now everybody wants to get into the potato seed industry. I believe that in future, we are soon going to start exporting seed. Actually, the certification only means that you are saying that those diseases that cause economic losses, let them not be in the seed that the farmer is going to be sold. Yeah, whenever it has escaped, even those business people know that the farmers now are quite educated. They're even claiming for compensation, because there's no way the farmer will be coughing out their money and not getting value for their money through the seed that they have been sold. I hope when I'm a seed grower, the same rules actually should also apply to me.
Yeah, they will definitely apply to you. So now, when we are looking at a diffusion of seed varieties, and this question is to Daniel, because we don't have Kasim here, but just looking at how you disseminate your seeds, like you have the seeds and you want to diffuse these seeds to the farmers. What are the channels that you use? And especially when we are talking about adoption, what's the adoption rate when it comes to the organic seeds, or generally just seeds? Probably you've, over years, I know the selection process is also a way of getting better seed, even if they're organic and you're propagating them yourself. How do you ensure that these better performing organic seeds are given to farmers, and how do they reach the farmers and ensure that they reach them in the quality that they got them in the first instance? Daniel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think for us, our distribution channel is not formal. It's a bit informal because it's farmer to farmer. Because the seeds that are not certified, they cannot be on the shelves of the seed stores. There are regulations that don't allow them to go there. So the only way the seeds can move, and we also don't advocate for some kind of one variety that is suitable for everyone. For instance, if we have a suitable variety of
we seem to have
black
lost
nightshade,
okay,
which if varieties, yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
No, we lost you, but you're back. It's okay.
Oh, sorry. So I'm saying we don't want to talk about ability of just one variety being suitable for everyone. Like if you have varieties that are working in this part of the country, they might not be working in Western Kenya. We have varieties that are working in Eastern Kenya that might not be very good here. So we promote that kind of a thing, and we develop. What we have is a database of farmers conserving certain varieties, certain crops, and where they are located. So that if someone is looking for instance, we get a lot of interest, farmers looking for purple maize, and this local maize. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Please proceed.
Yeah, and we get a lot of requests, and the only thing we do, for instance, if we in our database there is a farmer in Kakamega who has this yellow maize, we link those two farmers. Whatever they are going to discuss, so that they are able to exchange seeds or they are going to sell to each other, is their business. But our database has who has which kind of varieties and what and where they are. And also we also train groups of farmers on how to have their seeds clean and maintained purity in terms of not as high standard as commercial varieties, but in terms of what they can see, what they can observe. They know this is distinct, this is different from this one, and they are able to keep them pure from diseases and pests. And when we do seed fairs in that village, we do a seed fair, and the group that we have trained introduce themselves to other members of the village and tell them that we have this variety, we have this crop, and
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel.
pharmacy is the one who is having maybe I don't do it, and that is the way we are able to connect all of them.
Thank you. That's very informative. I'm sure there'll be quite a number of people who would want your contacts, and especially when you've mentioned purple maize and yellow maize, I'm sure some of them would want your contacts. So maybe just as we
last comment on that.
Yeah.
What we have also observed on this local maize, the yellow, the purple, these local maize, they are beet tolerant to fall armyworm, so that they are not as much affected as the others. But you can go ahead. But those ones are with farmers.
Great. So the next question is actually about the fall armyworm and the striga weed. From your experience, Dr. Kimani, what are companies doing when it comes to research and bringing in seed that is probably resistant from the FAO and the striga weed? And I know striga is really affecting a lot of maize in Western Kenya. So we look at, when you're looking at food security, then you look at the Western belt that is affected by striga. Then you see that there's a problem, and we are going to have more problems in the future. What is the government generally, or even research institution and companies doing about this? We also have a weed that is coming up, the Cascuta minuta, the Doda, that is now killing a lot of plants in Western Kenya as well. What is happening, and what can be done, especially when it comes to such kind of pests and diseases that are coming up?
Okay. Before I answer the question, let me just comment on Daniel and the seed there. I think the work they are doing is very good in terms of the conservation of the various germplasm of the seed. But now the challenge is, if I want to plant 100 acres of the seed that you are doing, since it's not formal, where would I ever get enough seed to do business with those seeds? It's important that maybe we continue this conversation together with the government to get systems that will facilitate whatever is going on, and also assure the quality of the seed, especially for those diseases that farmers can see. But also the work is good for the conservation of the genetic materials. With regard to the Cascuta and the minuta, these are invasive species. I know it's all over, and we've been discussing, because actually if they are not managed, they might kill quite a number of trees, and even some of them are going to the tea. But we need a multi-sectoral, including the county government, actually to sensitize the people, because sometimes people take pieces, even even children, when they're coming from school, they play around with those runners or stolons of those and spread them. So we need to create awareness. So far, the scientists have not come up with a very effective management system. So we may have programs for just removing them and destroying them even before they start flowering and producing seeds. It may need a lot of campaign to do that, and concerted efforts among various players and stakeholders. The other question was on
FAW and the striga weed, in terms of
oh, the striga, yes, I have seen it. There are quite a number of varieties with the companies that are resistant actually to striga weed. And also there are some technologies also that have been developed by scientists that can manage striker weed. However, I think there is need to create more awareness about these technologies to the farmers. I think the database of the resistant varieties is with KEFIS, and also Carlo can disseminate some of this information or share the information from those who are interested. The technology also there's a fungus that is usually captured on lice that actually manage the striker weed. But this technology has not been upskilled because of, I think as Africans, we need to come up with the programs for funding the technologies that may not be appealing to the rest of the world, but they are good for us. ISIPE has also come up with some technologies. I think they call them push and pull, where you can also intercrop with the crops like Desmodium to manage. There are various ways of managing the striker. However, all these methods need to be, the farmers to be, they need to be access to the farmers through training, creation of awareness, and also being told where they can acquire the seeds from, but they may have to buy because someone will have invested in producing them.
Yeah, maybe one last question for you. What do you think, like when you're talking about patents, the marketing rights and the patents, what is the time frame when you're looking at the patents that are issued to companies, especially when you're talking about seed, so that they can be now, open to the market?
I think it depends on various crops. Some of them range from maybe 10 years to 25 years, depending on the type of crops, varieties, and I guess it all goes to estimates of the times when the breeder is likely maybe to recoup back their investments, because coming up with a new variety is not easy. It requires a lot of investment. Yeah.
Just maybe to give you, we are winding up, so to give you just a session to talk about a few things. And one of the key things that has come up that is like cutting across is about the genetically modified food, organisms, the seeds, and the planting materials. So what is your view, especially now that Kenya is getting into the GMO seed and, just opening up the agricultural sector to take up the GMOs? What are the policies that are being put in place to protect our farmers? Are we looking at, when you're looking at the open pollinated varieties, especially, what are those policies that have been put in place to protect the farmer, especially those who are now doing the certified organic, organic farming, or are just using the normal hybrids that we have in the country, and they have no interest whatsoever in GMOs? Then when we are looking at also, the seed merchants, how do we go about in terms of verification when it comes to the quality of what is being sold to our farmers? And when it comes to quality, we're talking about viability. Last time we talked about seeds that sometimes do not germinate. Maybe they left the factory in good condition, but when they reach the farmer, they're not germinating. How sure are we that we are dealing with merchants who are, giving us the right kind of seed for our production and safeguarding our food security in the country, and also ensuring that whatever we are also taking to our farms will not cause any harm to our bodies? Then probably just to wind up also on Wanjama's side, how big is your organization? Dr. Esther Kimani has mentioned that if she wanted to do, say, 100 acres of maize, say the purple maize, how sure are we that we can get, seed that could be enough for 100 acres or maybe 1,000 acres? How prepared are you as an organization to ensure that we have enough seed through your, your network to the whole country and probably even the region? Let's just wind up the session and you can probably have, a few minutes just to wind up as we wind up today. Yeah, Dr. Kimani, you can take
Oh, it's me, okay. On the protection of pollinated plants from the GMO plants, I think they are, when the GMOs are being approved, there are usually standards that are set in terms of on isolation. In fact, this one is, and also there will be a monitoring exercise that will be put in place to see the status of those GMOs and the isolation, so that everybody can work together. I don't know how effective it will be, but at least there are some standards that are being put in place to ensure that everybody can have their space to produce what they want to produce, including those who want to produce the GMO. I think I saw the something like requirements for importation, like for citrus. Actually, some time ago, I think people brought in some diseases through citrus, and it's like almost wiped out the citrus industry in Kenya. But I can see it's coming up, especially in warmer places, because some of those diseases don't survive very well there. So the requirements is, it all depends. The requirements for imports actually vary from one country to another, because diseases are distributed differently in different countries. So you'd have just to ask for a permit from KEFIS, and then from there they will advise you. In fact, this one would have to come under quarantine to be observed and tested before you can be allowed to take it out to the environment. But it can be facilitated. That is the good news. It may not take you a month or two, but finally you'll get it. Then for the seed merchants and the quality of the seed, actually, first of all, for you to be a seed merchant, you need to register with KEFIS so that you are known, so that when KEFIS is coming to certify you, they already have a database on who is producing seed. And sources of seed, we have those ones that are imported and also those that are produced locally. For the imported one, we ensure that the equivalent of KEFIS in those countries are certifying their members and ensuring that the seed meet quality. But also because seed is living, as we discussed last time, it can die when it's being transported. On arrival, it's also tested again for germination, purity, and vigor, all that to make sure that the seed that is going to the farmer is okay. For the ones that are being produced locally, the seed inspectors from KEFIS normally monitor the production of that crop to ensure that it's free from diseases and pests. And for some of the diseases that can be latent, you also find that the seeds are taken to the lab for testing. I don't know how the people who are producing organic seeds have managed to control MLND. In fact, I think they are the ones who are making MLND not the maize-rhizome necrosis disease not disappear, because we find that in places where the farmers are recycling or making their own maize seed, the disease is still persisting, where it has been eradicated in most of the places where people use the certified seed, because all the seed that is being commercialized, before the seed is allowed to be marketed, has to go to the lab for testing for MLND, maize-rhizome necrosis disease. And if it's found positive, it's rejected, and we have agreed together with the seed merchants on how it will be done, so that then that's before it's treated, so that at least it can be used for other uses, like for making ugali and githeri, and other uses that maize is normally used for. And through that, you're able to control the diseases. However, there are those other issues whereby farmers still complain that the seed they got are not of quality. One of the major challenges we have is that if the agrovets are given seed, sometimes they keep them, and because they don't know, and since the seed is living, with the time it can die. So you find that if the agro-vets keep the seed in their shops for too long, that seed may lose viability, but because they don't want to have any losses, they still sell it to the farmer. So what we usually tell the farmers or anybody using certified seed, anytime you find any challenge with the seed that you have bought, first of all, when you buy, because we have had cases where also farmers have collected seed anywhere and accused a certain company. So what is usually recommended is, if a farmer buys seed, you make sure that you keep your receipt, and also you keep the packet of that seed that you bought, so that in case you have any challenges with issues of germinations or even purity in terms of variety purity, because variety purity is important, especially if you are doing for the market, because your customer may want a certain variety. So it's important that the seed that you are planting assures you of that variety. So, so that if you have any challenge, you should make sure that you report to KEFIS on those challenges. In fact, I would encourage every farmer to always report those issues, because it's the one that also helps the institution to improve procedures on certifying and following up, and also discouraging the people who may be wanting to make money out of the farmers for nothing from doing it, because they know that they are known, they'll be reported, and they'll be dealt with. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Wanjama, closing remarks, and also to address the questions that have been raised.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I want to comment also a bit on what Dr. Kimani said about seed saving causing this maize level consensus disease. For me, I don't think that is true. I think the problem is caused by commercial seed sector, because the maize, the presence of low, and I stand to be corrected.
It's okay, say what you think.
But I understand that when you have like less than 10%, yeah, when you have less than 10% of prevalence of the disease in the seed, that seed might be allowed to the market. And if it's allowed to the market, and it is just one producer who is sending seeds all the way from Kitale to Central to everywhere, the disease might go very far. But if I'm a farmer, I recycle my own seeds, and I'm not sending them very far, I'm likely to contain the disease. But just to proceed with the other question, is that we as farmers organization, we are now more than 57,000 who are saving seeds and exchanging materials. Those farmers are generally small scale in nature. They are 2 acres, 1 acre, and they produce seeds mostly for themselves and for the neighbors just around there. So a lot is almost impossible. Like now we have a list of people waiting for purple maize to be harvested so that they can get some, because there is no supply. But why there is no supply, it is because gain of the seed loss. Farmers' seeds are illegal, they cannot be sold in a formal market. But the farmers would want theirs to be certified. But the conditions and the process is not achievable for small scale seed traders or farmers, because, for instance, we may not even have the technology to do the DUS, to pass the DUS test, or even to write the documents themselves, or even they don't have all that money to pay. That's why the rare varieties might never reach, they will not come to the market, because the regulations are too stringent to allow small players to come to the formal market. And that's why it is not possible to supply a large demand. But briefly I'm happy for this, and I'm happy to continue this discussion with Dr. Kimani, and hopefully together we need to see how we can address some of these issues. I know she might be out of Kefis, but again, she has a lot of access to Kefis, and perhaps she might make them be able to see things in a different way, and perhaps be able to help. And I'm also hoping to have had this opportunity to talk even to some people that I know in the audience. And thank you very much for this invitation. And I hope to connect again in this conversation. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Kimani and Wanjama. Maybe to just pick on some of the comments before we wind up, there's a comment by Zachary Makanya, and he says that the pollen grains can travel over several kilometers when we are talking about the GMOs. His worry is on the GMOs. And he says that for cross-pollination, especially when you're looking at the insects like bees, which can carry some of these pollen grains. And he also says that several BT projects have failed, like the Makatini BT cotton in South Africa. They started with 3,000 farmers, and now it's only 10% who are left. Pelium, there's also another company in Kenya that has started, but they're also frustrated. Farmers have ended up not continuing with the process. Then just to finalize, the crops that have been mentioned, that's from LNB. She says that potatoes, sweet potatoes, cassava are very important crops to the nation so far, as in terms of when you're looking at food security, food nutrition. The government is working to have the, the blends of these flours so that to enhance the nutrition of our food. So when you're talking about this, when you're talking about blending of these types of flours, then standards is not even, it's non-questionable. They have to be there. So she feels that they should be there. So I would like to thank our audience today and thank you for joining us. It's 8:30 East African time, and we'd like to tell you good night and thank you for joining us today.
Bye.
Bye. Or was I supposed to comment on this?